So I just finished writing the script for my next big project. And yeah, it's going to take me a while to put it together. So I decided I'll make a quick video dissecting one of my favorite seasons from the last few years. Hope you enjoy. Home runs. Chicks love them.
Chicks dig the long ball.
They're pretty much the only thing ESPN will show highlights of, and they even bring families together.
Hey, Dad, do you remember when Sammy Sosa hit 3 home runs in one game? Yep, I remember that, son. That was your first baseball game. Oh, thanks for that moment. That was amazing, Dad. It was great to share that moment with you, son. I love you. You're my only son.
You would assume to lead the league in home runs means that you put together a great season that will net you a lot of money. But does it really? Chris Carter tied for the NL lead in home runs over the course of the 2016 season. He was non-tendered by the Brewers the following December. This made him the only player in MLB history to be cut by his team the year after leading the league in home runs. He played 62 games for the New York Yankees in 2017 before being out of the MLB entirely. The last person to lead the NL in home runs and be out of the game within 2 years was Gavin Cravith in 1919. Mind you, he led the league with 12. Why was this the fate bestowed on the NL's home run champion?
Fill out an entry form, and if you guess the 98 home run champions total, you'll be entered to win a trip for 4 to this year's World Series.
A wise man once said, "Home runs are empty calories." That man was Alex Rodriguez, who is sitting comfortably at number 4 on the all-time home runs list. Homers are, in many ways, good. It is the most efficient way to cash in on every base runner. It can change the momentum of a game. And also, most importantly, they're cool.
Charges it to center field. McCutchen near the wall.
We typically associate the game's elites as guys who can hit a lot of them. But what if a home run hitter doesn't actually provide much value to your team? Here are the 10 worst seasons in which the player led his league in home runs by FWAR for the last 50 years. Now, if you're watching this video, you probably know what WAR, or wins above replacement, is. But in case you're not familiar, WAR attempts to be a catch-all in terms of how much value you provide your team measured over hitting, running, and fielding. It's meant to show how many wins you provide your team over a replacement player. So 0 to 2 WAR is roughly replacement level, 2 to 3 means you're probably good enough to be a starter, 4 to 5 means you're playing at an all-star level, and so on. And the F just means it's Fangraphs calculation, as opposed to Baseball Reference. As you can see here, Chris Carter put up what Fangraphs would call a scrub season. This is by far the worst season in which a dude won the home run championship since the integration era. I know I only listed the last 50 years, but I did look back to 1947, and there were no seasons even close to this. Roberto Perez that year, who played in 61 games, a little more than a third of the games Carter played in, who had a slash line that looked like this, put up more FWAR that year. But this really gets to the complications of WAR. Chris Carter played 153 of his games at first base, which is the least valued position according to WAR. He was also really bad at it. He made 11 errors, which led the league. But there is a bit of a discrepancy I have to point out. The errors, bad. If we value him with UZR, or Ultimate Zone Rating, which attempts to calculate how many runs a player saves using traditional metrics, he grades out at a negative 4.4, which puts him as the second worst qualified first baseman of 2016 next to Eric Hosmer. But in 2020, StatCast introduced infielders outs above average, which uses StatCast tracking to measure defensive value. They were able to retroactively grade a season and give him 5 outs above average, good enough for 7th among first basemen that year. Our buddy Eric Hosmer was next to last at negative 8, so it didn't just suddenly flip the script on everyone. Now look, all this proves is that grading defense is really difficult, but maybe the errors aren't as bad when you realize he had a surprising amount of range. But whatever, defense is the boring, nerdy nonsense. I want to have some fun and talk some hitting. That's why we're here in the first place, right?
Do you need a power hitter on your team?
Does the job.
Do you need a guy that can hit a fastball, curveball, changeup? How about a sinker? Do you need a guy that can hit anything?
Let's talk about what made his season so putrid. It's because he struck out. A lot. In fact, at the time, his 206 strikeouts were 7th most for a single season. I know we as baseball fans in the year 2021 are pretty desensitized to strikeouts, and even doing some quick and dirty math shows that this year alone, 3 guys are on pace to top that total. But that's still a lot of strikeouts. Carter had 20 games in which he struck out 3 or more times. This included a stretch from May 11th to May 26th where he had 7 sombreros in the span of 12 games. All this talk of strikeouts is starting to make me sad. But before we move on, it's kind of hilarious that the top 24 all-time single-season strikeout leaders is comprised of just 13 dudes. And Drew Stubbs, what are you doing here? You don't belong here, silly. You can't really blame Chris for wanting an all-or-nothing approach though, as he had one of the unluckiest seasons that year. His batting average on balls in play was .260, or 6th worst among qualified hitters. And it's not like he was making weak contact. His expected weighted on-base average on contact, better known as
Bacon,
which takes in StatCast data to measure pure quality of contact, was an astounding 500. For reference, Giancarlo Stanton in 2017, the year he won an MVP, had an XWO bacon of 498. Also, his 17.6 barrel percentage is the 14th best of the StatCast era. One of my favorite activities is scrolling through a player's splits on Baseball Reference. I want to see what situations they played best in and vice versa. Chris Carter really liked leading off innings, as he basically became peak Bonds whenever he would be the first one up. If you prorated his leadoff home run total to a full season, you'd come out with 65 dingers. I decided to take this a step further and subtract his leadoff stats from his season total and add those at-bats back based on his numbers when not leading off an inning, and you get this hideous looking stat line. He also did not like hitting garbage time home runs. This is when you homer when your team is already ahead by 5 or more runs. Yes, there's still value in distancing yourself from the opponent as much as you can, but if the opposing team can't tie the game with one swing, it's safe to say you're safely in the lead. I'm looking at you, Tatis. Only 2 of Carter's 41 homers were hit in garbage time. For reference, 11 of Aaron Judge's 52 home runs in 2017 were hit in garbage time. The year he was supposed to win the MVP. Also, fun fact about Judge's 2017. According to Fangraphs clutch stat, Aaron Judge had the 3rd least clutch season of all time.
Barry Bonds, it's time. It's time to walk into retirement.
So, after all of this, I have to ask myself, why are we where we are? I don't know if anyone realizes, but baseball has a little bit of a problem with the 3 true outcomes game. You think teams wouldn't be so with the long ball after a season like this. But then 2017 happens, in which players hit the most home runs out of any season prior, only for the record to stand a total of 2 years. So then the MLB decides to deaden the balls, and now we're about to shatter the strikeout record in 2021. What to make of Chris Carter's season then? Well, I think he was a victim of a growing mentality of valuing analytics over big dumb results like low OBP power and RBIs. Unfortunately for him, we didn't quite make it to where we can now appreciate how much potential was in his batted ball data, as StatCast was just 2 years old in 2016. I mentioned earlier that his BABIP was a pathetic 260. If you bumped it up to 272, his career average, by giving him just 4 more singles, not even doubles or triples, his slash line goes up to this, and his OPS jumps from 50th, right under Dustin Pedroia's last full year, to number 42, right above prime Justin Turner. Maybe if we measured defense based on outs above average, we would see the errors could be fixed. Carter was essentially replaced in Milwaukee by Eric Thames, who is, for all intents and purposes, the left-handed equivalent of Chris Carter. He was then signed by what we thought was a rebuilding Yankees team, who had enough patience with him until they realized they had an actual shot to return to the postseason that year and released him before the All-Star break so they could start their future star, Greg Bird. But it looks like Carter is having a nice career resurgence in the Mexican League. He will go down as the first, if not only player to ever get released the year after leading his league in home runs. And for that, I thank him.